Windows games!
Hello ladies and gentlemen, again here with another League of Legends champion guide for you. Have you ever wanted to be a wizard, but didn't want to go to school for it like Harry Potter? Wanted to wander out into the wilderness and find ancient secrets? Wanted to play an easy to pick up champion with a surprisingly high skill cap? Then Ryze the Rogue Mage is for you! The Blue Man group rejected him, so he decided to join us today. Let's learn how to Ryze. Ryze is a mid-ranged mage, suited for a solo lane. He's tough and durable, with some unique aspects to his kit. Firstly, while all his damaging abilities will scale with ability power, as you might expect, they also scale with his maximum mana. This drastically warps how Ryze can be built, letting him buy items that most other mages wouldn't even consider while still granting him damage. He's a late-game monster, often able to carry teams by himself if allowed to be around long enough. If you're new, he's also really easy to play. He has no skill shots whatsoever. Just point and click and watch the damage rack up. Ryze is a spellcasting king, able to dump spell after spell after spell like a machine gun till his target is dead. This is facilitated primarily by his passive, Arcane Mastery. Each time he casts a spell, all of his other spells have their cooldown reduced by 1 second. Cast his spells in the right order and he'll have everything up and ready almost constantly. That machine gunning of spells is also helped along by his Q, Overload. It's got 2 parts. Passively, it gives him cooldown reduction. At max ranks, it's a full 10%. We'll rely on that and build on it later. Actively, it's a very simple spell. Ryze hurls a ball of energy at a target, dealing magic damage. The most important part, though, is its cooldown. A base of only 3.5 seconds. Combine this with his passive and some cooldown reduction, and we'll be dropping this between every other spell. Max this one out first for early damage, and of course, the CDR. In addition to being a mage, Ryze moonlights as a jailer. Who knew? With his W, he locks a target in Rune Prison, rooting them in place for a few seconds and dealing magic damage to them. Unlike his other spells, which have to travel to the target, Rune Prison is instantaneous. This is awesome for locking down targets while he blasts them with spells, or even for escaping. It is just a snare though, so they can still attack and cast spells themselves. It doesn't stop channel abilities either, like Katarine's ultimate. Take this one at level 2, or 1 if necessary for an early fight for the utility, and max it out either 2nd or 3rd depending on your goals. We'll come back to that in a little bit. His E is his least damaging spell, but for good reason. Spell Flux flies to a target just like Overload, but then bounces 5 times for a total of 6 hits, either between enemies or to Ryze himself if it must. Each time it hits, it deals magic damage and reduces their magic resistance for 5 seconds. It does nothing if it hits Ryze, of course, just gives it a chance to bounce back to a target if need be. All in all, it can hit the same target up to 3 times if it's in close enough proximity. This is great for team fights and for clearing waves, especially in conjunction with Ryze's ultimate, which we'll get to in a moment. This is the other option I meant for leveling. Always take a point in this at level 3, so you have all 3 spells to combo with, but then choose to level this or Rune Prison first. Level Rune Prison for a more quick single target damage and for a longer root duration. Level Spell Flux first if you plan on pushing waves and working in team fights more immediately. Finally, the Rogue Mage's ultimate is Desperate Power. For no cost, he can power himself up, making everything else more awesome for several seconds. It does 3 things. 1. It makes him run faster, making him better able to keep up with fleeing targets. 2. He gains Spell Vamp, so that he becomes surprisingly tanky in a team fight. And 3. All of his abilities deal 50% area of effect damage. This last one is massive, especially in clumped up fights. It has a fairly long cooldown for Ryze, but for Ryze that means nothing. With cooldown reduction and his passive, it will be up pretty much whenever he wants to use it. Use it to clear waves, clear jungle camps, in team fights, even to get back to lane quickly. It's free after all. Take points in this every chance you can. For summoner spells, to complement his bursty kit, you can start out with Ignite to make sure you deal enough damage to kill him. Flash, as always, is super powerful for engaging or escaping, especially since he has no way to hop over walls himself. Lastly, if you're feeling confident in your abilities, take Teleport instead of Ignite. This will allow you to pull off surprise ganks quite often and blow your enemies out of the water. For runes, I take Magic Penetration Marks, Flat Armor Seals, Scaling Magic Resistance Glyphs, and Movement Speed Quintessences. Now, you might be wondering why I'm not just building mana here. Well, while those are decent on Ryze, we'll be building plenty of that already throughout the game. Better to get something more useful that we're not going to get necessarily immediately. The penetration is really great on Ryze, and you might even consider hybrid penetration depending on what you buy later. Flat Armor Seals will, as usual, keep us tanky in the early game versus minion poke, and especially if the enemy is AD. The Magic Resist, as usual, is great throughout the game. Lastly, since Ryze has such a short range, more movement speed is always quite useful for him. Masteries are interesting as well. Ryze doesn't need a full AP page much like most mages, and instead benefits more from the utility tree. I go 9-0-21. In this way, he can get a full 10% cooldown reduction, some bonus movement speed, some mana, and a variety of other bonuses. Ryze is one of the few champions that can really benefit from the Strength of Spirit mastery, letting him get health regen for getting mana that he already planned to buy. Feel free to play around with these masteries a little too, as the Biscuiteer and gold gaining masteries are also really good. For items, we'll usually want to start with a Sapphire Crystal and 2 health potions. If you think your enemy will be harassing you a lot, consider a Fairy Charm with potions and wards so you can stay healed up. If you need to be defensive and they have a lot of skill shots, say for example Ahri, perhaps start with boots and potions instead so you can dodge. Regardless of what you do, the first item you want to rush for is Tear of the Goddess. That's 300 gold if you started with a Sapphire Crystal. This is quite literally the strongest item on Ryze, giving him amazing sustained burst and ever-growing damage potential. Follow this up with a Catalyst the Protector for a strong defensive core that still gives him tons of damage. Turn that Catalyst into a Rod of Ages as soon as you can for another source of growing power and defense. As for shoes, consider Sorcerer's Shoes if the enemy is smart enough to build magic resistance, Mercury Treads if they're heavy on crowd control, and Boots Mobility if you just need to get places faster. The latter is great if you're trying to gank a lot. Eventually, we'll want to turn that Tear of the Goddess into something, either an Archangel Staff or a Manamune. Both of these are awesome on Ryze in their own way. The Archangel Staff is more expensive, but provides AP to boost his spells more, and as Seraph's Embrace, it gives a massive shield. The Manamune doesn't apply to spells quite as well, but the Muramana version adds physical damage to all attacks and single target spells, giving more single target DPS than Seraph's Embrace can. Take your pick, or heck, build both. Just be sure to only start building the second one after the first has become either the Seraph's Embrace or the Muramana. At that point they lose the unique passive all the others share and cease competing for the mana gaining component. Now, with our masteries and the passive of Overload, we've got 20% cooldown reduction. Let's get the other 20 from a single item. Frozen Heart is amazing on Ryze, giving a ton of mana but also making him strong enough versus physical compositions. Spirit Visage does the same for magic resistance but gives no mana. Still, it makes you extra tanky in general with tons more health. For our last 2 slots, generally we'll want to finish off with Will of the Ancients for some spell vamp and Void Staff to break through our enemy's magic resistances, but we have a few other options as well. Abyssal Scepter does similar to Void Staff and covers Spirit Visage's magic resist niche if we purchased a Frozen Heart. Rabadon's Death Cap, while just a pure AP item, is still really good and might be an awesome last choice if you're going for some kind of pure damage build. Lich Bane is a weird option, but cool, letting you weave in basic attacks for extra magic damage while getting mana and some much needed move speed. Twin Shadows can similarly give more speed and can help him lock down targets for destruction exceptionally well, not to mention keep them in sight should they try to hide in the bushes. When playing Ryze, it's very important to cast your spells in as rapid a succession as possible. In order to do this, you shouldn't cast them normally. If you aren't already, try Smart Casting. Smart Casting casts the spell immediately on pressing the button rather than pressing and clicking the target. This cuts your spellcasting time pretty much in half. On the basic keyboard layout, you can smartcast by holding shift while pressing the spells button. But as Ryze is all about this stuff, I recommend going into your key binding options and changing out the regular keys for this. It may take a little getting used to, but it's well worth it, trust me. If you like the comfort of seeing your ranges though, you can be like me and have your cake and eat it too. Under more options, you can select Smartcast range indicators so that you can see just how close you need to be to cast. And boy is that cake tasty. Before we get to the comboing itself, there's one important thing to note about your ultimate. If you activate it while your Q or E are still in flight, then they will gain the benefits when they hit. In this way, you can weave your ultimate into your combo as well, using it to cast your other spells more quickly while still gaining the benefits of it. Now, to combos! The order you cast your spells determines how much damage you deal and how much you can do at once. Generally speaking, because of its ridiculously short cooldown, you will want to cast your Q first at all times and weave it in between every other spell. In this way, it will reduce the cooldown of the other spells as often as possible while providing bursts of damage. If, however, you are in lane and the window for dropping damage on the target is very small, for a small combo, consider starting with W, then dropping Q and E on them for a quick chunk of damage. For your standard combo, especially at maximum cooldown reduction, start with Q, lock them down with W, another Q, E, Q, R, and cycle back around to the start. This is a sustained burst that will deal as much damage as possible while locking down the target. Switching E with W will deal more damage, but runs the risk of having them run away. You can also lead with your ults, going QR, QE, QW, which will deal a more upfront burst if they're clumped up in a group due to the awesome combination of R and E, but since R is near the front, it won't be available to shorten cooldowns, so you will have to wait a moment before your second cycle of spells. Lastly, for a super quick burst combo, particularly if they're running blindly into you in a bush, go Q, E, W, Q. The rapid bounce of E between you and them will deal a ton of damage before they even know what's hit them. Ryze is fairly weak in the early game, but he snowballs quickly. The more mana he has, the stronger he becomes, and usually the more mana he has, the tankier he is. The later the game, the more powerful the Ryze. If you're having a little trouble early, don't give up. Just keep farming and get stronger. The power of the rogue mage will not be denied. In teamfights, your job is to unload as much damage as you can, be that standing in the back or diving their carries. He has trouble chasing, so don't go too far. Your spell vamp will give you a surprising amount of tankiness in the fight, so drop as many spells as you can and make people explode. Ryze is a monster of a mage. Practice your combos and farm up your mana, and you will lead your team to victory. So thanks for watching, everyone. If you have enjoyed this guide, please let me know by hitting the like button. Speak up in the comments below if you have advice or questions. We're all here to learn. Subscribe for future content, including champion guides, gameplay guides, and other possibly not LOL stuff. Follow me on Twitch for streams and Twitter and Facebook to see what else is going on. Till next time, I've been Gin, and you've been watching me talk about a video game. So what are you waiting for? Go play!
Let's go, let's go! I'm like a shotgun, short range, high damage. Walk and spell metal storm, stay back, you can't manage. I'm taking advantage, half cast to half tank. Collectible kills every time your jungle comes to gank. You thought you kinda picked me, must be delusional. All of my punishment is cruel and unusual. Unconstitutional, late game I'm immovable. Dominate the league, that's a fact irrefutable. Control your every motion, I'm like a prison guard. Lane like a college town, everywhere you look is bars. I'm specting move speed, you're never too far. Close the gap quick, I'm the leader, you're the pace car. I run the mid lane, rule with an iron fist. No skill shots, cause I'm too skilled to ever